My name is Eugene Apia Kubi Kojo Baffoe. That is my full government and African name. I discovered hip hop dance and hip hop culture through my sister, who was a dancer at the time. So I was about 12 years old and my mom dragged me out to her recital, where I sat in the audience with my Game Boy trying my best to ignore everything that was going on, because lame. My mom nudged me and she's like, look, fine, pay attention. And I looked up and my sister was on stage doing a solo. And I saw her perform and I saw her dance for the first time, and she looked so passionate about what she was doing. And as her little brother, it was the first time I saw her smile. To me, she's like super angry all the time and like hates me and everything. And I said to myself, whatever this dance thing is, if it's able to turn this very grumpy person into a smiley, happy person, I want to know everything about it. So we went home that night and I said, teach me everything you know, right? Taught me my first dance move, which was a moonwalk. And she said, if you can get this down, I'll teach you everything else. So 2 months later, she put me out of my misery and she's like, okay. And she taught me my first few moves, right? And I was hooked.
Check the mic and make sure it sound right, boys.
I was dancing, obviously, from Montreal, Quebec. That's where I'm born and raised. In 2006, I moved to Winnipeg after my dad got his doctorate degree. So went to Glenlawn Collegiate and was able to get together with some people there and dance there and create some routines and dance for Spirit Week there. And I got noticed by a dance studio director at the time and got my first dance studio job. Was able to eventually lead to performing all over this city and this country. If I can sum up hip-hop culture into a few words, I would say it is a product of the struggle. Its emergence in the South Bronx of New York in the 60s and 70s it was birthed in a neighborhood that was forgotten. The South Bronx of New York at the time was on fire, legitimately. It was a neighborhood that was completely abandoned. Resources were not going anywhere towards it, and no politicians or governors or mayors or anybody was listening to the plight of that community. Black people, Cuban Americans, Latin Americans discovered something that would allow them to speak for themselves. I tell people now, hip hop is not because it's cool, it's not because it's awesome, it's because that was what a necessity for them at the time, I've spent years trying to tell you, like, we are burning here, we are poor here, we need your help, and you weren't listening. And suddenly I go on the floor and spin on my head. Suddenly I grab a microphone. Suddenly I create music out of, a record player. Suddenly I paint a wall with my feelings, and suddenly you're listening. Suddenly the media is like, breakdancing is emerging. And it's like, we've been here for years. I think the reason why I connected with that, at the time watching my sister do it, I was able to discover my own personal struggle and also discover my history and background through the lens of this culture. And when I can't talk and when I can't speak and when I can't have any words come from my face, I can turn to dance, I can turn to DJing, I can turn to rap, I can turn to art. And I can get people in a room and understand my struggle and my story, and I don't have to say a word to them. We are in a time that I am devastated with, and at the same time it's confusing, because as devastated as I am, I'm equally grateful. It takes something so monumentous to get people to listen. It takes something so monumentous for people to realize that something is happening right now that's been happening for a very, very long time. I have known that my life is different for a very long time. I remember the first time that I realized that I wasn't treated the same as a black man was at the age of 7. Growing up in Montreal, going to an all-French school, a predominantly white school, people will communicate with what they can relate to. That's normal human behavior. Growing up in elementary school, I was avoided for not being able to be related to. The way I spoke, the clothes that I had were so different from my French counterparts or my classmates from the age of 7 that I remember going home and asking my parents, like, why won't the white kids play with me? I had my group of other friends of color and we rolled together like out of necessity and safety, but I remember already wanting approval and acceptance from my white classmates. Before I'd ever heard of the term racism or discrimination or segregation or history of anything, like I already in my life felt like there's a gap and there's a distance, The world is upset about what has happened to our brother George Floyd specifically. As black people, we have to be grateful for the death of one of our own, because that's what it takes for the entire world to start listening. Product of the struggle, right? That's the same reason that you listen to hip hop, is because the struggle got so great that it got your attention. Back in 2014, I had to look this up again, when we lost Trayvon Martin and the marches that were happening at that point. When we lost Tamir Rice, when we lost Walter Scott, when we lost Eric Garner, when we lost Sandra Bland, we have marched every single time. What has changed? It's not that we should stop marching. It's why do we have to keep marching? Are we even being listened to now? As Black people, we have shouted and we have said it, and now it's up to our allies to take over. We've been trying for over 400 years to get you to see what's been happening for 400 years, you know? At what point is it your turn to do something as well? We are a human race, we are all living, but it's been made clear that the way the Black race is treated is not the same as our other counterparts. So we scream from the rooftops, Black Lives Matter, because it's been made clear to us that you don't think we do. I have a lot of talks with, you know, my white friends about what white privilege actually is, because I don't blame anybody for not understanding it, and I don't blame anybody for being offended by it. Because one of the things that I hear right away when I say you benefit from white privilege, what do you mean? I've undergone many hardships in my life. Like, my family was poor. It's not even about you. Your family, of course they went through struggle. Of course there were some rough moments, but you didn't experience what we are currently talking about. The systemic issue that exists, you benefit from it without even knowing about it. In order to march next to me, you have to acknowledge your privilege first. In order to understand that if we march and shit goes left, the police will not go to you. And if there's some reason or something about that you don't seem to understand or don't want to understand, this conversation we're now having is your privilege. Are you able to set yourself aside to understand the plight of anybody else on this planet? And if you can't do that, I can't help you. Racism exists, but the systemic issue of it is way beyond that. It doesn't come in the form of, you're the worst, get your people out of here. That literally never happens. What happens is those Black kids are at the back of the classroom. What happens is we have walled off this neighborhood in this particular city, and we are preventing real resources from going to that community. With you, we will bring this world to where we want it to be for all of us, so that there will come a day where I can actually say all lives matter. I can't say it now, and it shouldn't be said now, but I want to be able to say it. When Black lives matter, when Indigenous lives matter, when people of color's lives matter, then all lives will matter.